Good evening. My name is Naomi Gutnick. It's an honor to be here with Rabbi Krinsky and Professor Franks at Shabtai, New York City. I've enjoyed every Shabtai event I have been to, each one interesting, unique, and an important space like no other. I'm sure tonight we are in for a real treat. I'm not normally a public speaker, but when my dear sister Toby asked me to say a few words about our beloved grandmother, Miriam Weiss, whose 12th yahrzeit is in a few weeks, I agreed, as to speak of her is a privilege. I had the lucky fortune to live with my grandparents for 5 of my formative teenage years. I wish all of you here could have met her. She was special and really extraordinary. Miriam Weiss was only 19 years old when her life was irrevocably changed as the fires of anti-Semitism, hate, and brutality came to her and her family's doorstep. Her parents, brothers, grandparents, and most of her extended family were murdered by the Nazis. From a young age, Miriam was a clever solutionizer who had this great capacity to think and act quickly and efficiently in the moment. This helped her to survive circumstances that read like a thriller mystery Hollywood film fraught with nail-biting, heart-stopping twists and turns. Post-war Miriam, alone in the world like many, she surged ahead to create a life for herself, together with our dearest grandfather, Rebbe Weiss. She was a survivor, not a victim, and this narrative was evident until her day of passing. Miriam was a woman before her time. Like many great people, she was highly accomplished, industrious, and yet so very humble. A shrewd and capable businesswoman who, together with my grandfather, built a successful business. She was also growing her own vegetables, had chickens hatching fresh eggs in the backyard, and was making weekly sourdough challah long before it was in fashion. Not to mention the days when she was making pasta from scratch. I would come home from school to pasta hanging all over the kitchen drying. I do not believe she had a lazy bone in her body. She personified the concept of ha'maaseh hu ha'ikar. The deed is the most important. An early riser, she seized each day and maximized it to the fullest. She never seemed to understand the fuss we made of her, as she shared herself and her lessons freely and with great love and affection. But here's the thing. Bobby, as we called her, endured real suffering in her lifetime. Not only the loss of her parents and family, who were cruelly taken from her long before their time, of whom she confided in me in her 80s, that she still woke up in the middle of the night yearning for. Bobby suffered physical suffering as well in the last 20 or so years of her life. As someone who lived with her for part of this time, what I saw and learned from her is how she approached her suffering. She did not complain. She did not deny it. She endured the reality of it. But within her suffering, she chose life and she enjoyed living it. She did not turn away from God in her suffering. She turned towards God in her suffering. She spoke lovingly of what she would say, the Heilige Vashefer, the Holy Creator. She attributed so much of her success in her life to his blessings. And despite all that she had been through in her life, she gave over this deep love and respect for God and his Torah to the next generation. To have her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and now great-great-grandchildren continue in the ways of our forefathers was like her very breath. To instill the values of her upbringing into the next generation was crucial to her. It is fitting that today we will hear from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Krinsky, as the Rebbe was the leader of world Jewry to a generation crushed by the Holocaust. When many Jews felt more comfortable to keep their religion under the radar, the Rebbe encouraged a traumatized generation to practice their faith with pride and in public. The Rebbe had an enormous impact on my grandparents and the trajectory of our whole family. The Rebbe was my grandmother's link to her past, as well as the link to her future. Bobby struggled with survivor's guilt, and it was only in her later years that she mentioned to me that she had recently read a concept from Chassidus, the deeper dimension of the Torah, that each soul comes into this world to complete its own unique mission. She turned to me, and she said with great feeling and relief, "It must have been that I just had to fulfill my mission, and that is why I survived." Well, Bobby, if even a part of your mission was to inspire the next generation to be strong and have faith, emunah, and trust, bitachon, in God, to learn and follow in his ways, I say that you succeeded many times over. For your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren, you are a compass and a guiding light as we follow in your footsteps and endeavor to instill the same values in our and our families' lives. Though you have been gone for some time, you are a daily part of our lives as we think, what would Bobby say? What would Bobby do? Bobby, you live on. May your holy neshama have an aliyah, Miriam Bas Alter Mordechai. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Oh, sorry, I'm introducing our host for this evening.
Thank you, Nomi. Thank you. Wow, so many people. It's like the bar mitzvah speech that I never gave. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to my and my partner Emily's home. Thanks for coming on this cold and gray evening. Thank you, Nomi and the Leviton family from Seattle for sponsoring this event in honor of their grandmother's yahrzeit. My name is Aaron Wolosch-Dessauer. I'm an alum of Yale Law School, where I studied with Avi, Greg Dubinsky, Sam, and other people who I don't see right now, where I studied law and philosophy and also later taught law and philosophy. It's an honor and privilege to welcome Rabbi Krinsky, the personal secretary to the late Lubavitch Rebbe and chairman of Chabad International, and Paul Franks, the Robert and Patricia Weiss Professor of Philosophy and Judaic Studies at Yale. Tonight's guests require no introduction because everything that could be said about them could not be enough. For me personally, this talk is very special. As I mentioned to the rabbi earlier, I first encountered Chabad in Boston on Harvard's campus when I first came to this country from Germany. It was the first time that I was welcomed anywhere as a Jew, regardless of how religious or observant I was. Whenever I had dinner at the Chabad house at Harvard, Rabbi Zarki and his family would welcome me as their own, like their own family member, which as an immigrant and as a Jew meant so much to me. I grew up, as you can probably tell from my accent, in Germany. I was one of a few Jews growing up there in a small college town called Münster. Münster is mostly known for its Catholic divinity school. In fact, the late Pope, Joseph Ratzinger, was a professor at the divinity school. Needless to say, there were not many Jews in my hometown. And the only people who actually read and studied Hebrew, let alone Aramaic, were the faculty members of the Catholic divinity school. Most of the members of the synagogue in Münster were families that returned to Germany after the Holocaust and always felt a sense of regret about having returned to the country of the perpetrators. There's also like a sense of survivor's guilt, as Naomi mentioned, and it's something that I know very much about, and I feel like if I had met your grandmother, I could very much relate to her and her what seems to be a very, very inspiring, adventurous life story. To Jews like me, growing up in Germany, being Jewish meant to be different, and frankly, it meant to be something you would be ashamed about, not something you would ever celebrate. When I grew up, I don't recall that I've ever been to someone's house for Shabbos. I never celebrated any Jewish holidays with strangers, and I also never had a formal Jewish education. So when I grew up, I didn't understand the richness of what it means to be Jewish. That all changed when I was later in New Haven and when I met Toby and Shmuley and came to the dinners of Shabtai, which at the time was called the Chai Society. It was at Shabtai where I found my intellectual and spiritual home. And when I first heard one of the co-founders of Shabtai, Senator Cory Booker, talk about his favorite midrash, I was thinking, wow, Jewish life is very different in America than it is in Germany. But joking aside, Shmuley and Toby have welcomed me and thousands of others with open arms and included me to their home, fed us with delicious meals, and introduced me to lifelong friends. And most important, perhaps, they expanded my intellectual and spiritual horizon. So thank you so much. I want to extend my gratitude to you, Shmuley and Toby, for your amazing work. And I'm very grateful that I can pass forward what you have given me when I was in New Haven. So without further ado, please help me welcome Rabbi Krinsky and Professor Franks.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we will not only learn history, but we'll also make history, since this is a unique and unprecedented opportunity to hear from Rabbi Krinsky, who was not only a front seat observer, but also a participant in one of the most remarkable developments of Jewish history, but also, I think, of world history, certainly in the last 100 years. The incredible growth and development of Chabad to the point where it is now the largest Jewish organization in the world. And Rabbi Krinsky had the opportunity to observe the Rebbe up close, and we're looking forward to hearing many stories that have not been told and hearing many insights and reflections that have not yet been shared. So, Rabbi Krinsky, I'd like to start with your early life. When did your family come to America, and where did they settle?
Good evening, everybody. Will you please answer the question? Is the mic on, right? My dad was born in 1887, and my mother thereabouts on a Rosh Hashanah, either a year before or a year after. I'm not sure of the exact year. And they came to America at the turn of the century. My father came in 1913, about the same year as my mother. My father came he was orphaned at 10 and came alone. He was single at the time. And my mother came with her parents and siblings at about that time, as I said. And my mother's family lived in Smilan, not too far from Lubavitch in Ukraine. And they were fortunate to ask the Rebbe at the time if they should go to America. He answered in the affirmative, but they should live on a farm. My father was born in Bialystok, which was neither Poland or Russia. It changed its Balabatischkeit, depending on the different governments. And they met and married in 1914. It was on the farm near Worcester. And in 1915, the first child was born, a boy. And they eventually had 9 children, I being the youngest of 9, 4 brothers and 4 sisters. And my father's diary, when it came to my birth, he referred to me as a Ben Zkunim, born at an elder age. They were both mid-40s, and I came along. And it's a very endearing title. We just read about it in the Sedra of the week, in the show. And they vowed at their wedding, before the wedding, that if God will bless them with children, they will do their utmost, and even more than that, to make sure that their children become Torah observers, Shomer Torah Mitzvah. And they were very successful. I can tell you that my 2 oldest brothers, Velvel and Mesha, they were cantors. I remember Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, vividly. And in 1942, they were both drafted the United States Army. Well, the older brother, Velvel, we called him in Yiddish, was in the United States Air Force. He served as a navigator on the bombers, if you're familiar with the equipment, the B-19s, et cetera. I am. And he was later transferred to become a director of the traffic, air traffic, in the battles of the Bulge. And my brother Mesha ended up in Okinawa, in the Pacific scene. Before they left for overseas, I had the opportunity to visit the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe that we know and talk about today, a father-in-law. They both had blessings that they should be successful in what they do and come back home untouched. And they both did, thank God. But the younger of the two was married at the time with a little baby girl. And when he was called, all he could do was bring his wife and baby to our home in Bicknell Street in Dorchester until after the war came home. I want to give some veracity to this title for this evening, is from the Latin school to, what was it, to Lubavitch. It's an interesting question. And I left Boston Public Latin School before the holidays, the Jewish holidays in 1945. I was 12 at the time. I was in high school at 12 for some reason. And after going there for a while, my parents decided in their wisdom that they wanted me to be something more than that. And they sent me to Lubavitch. Our family was connected to Lubavitch. My father, way before I was born, our home at the time, for my father and mother, was open for all the Lubavitcher rabbis who came on missions from the Rebbe himself at that time, a place where they could stay and they could do what they had to do to fulfill the mission of that particular visit. And so we had at Shabbos at the table, we'd speak about the Rebbe, and we also spoke about the Rebbe to be, the Rebbe that I'm here to talk about tonight. He was always very, very highly regarded as a genius in Torah and about Midas Tevis. He was a very special human being. And so what happened was, when I came to New York in 1945, I was supposed to come when the school year started, after Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. But my parents, in their wisdom, thought that an older brother was coming to New York for the holidays, for Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. So what better time is there to be by the Rebbe for Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah? I was 12, but they thought I would appreciate it. I sure did. So we came 2 days before the day before Hoshana Rabbah, and the night of Hoshana Rabbah, the custom in Chabad is that after 1 o'clock at night, you recite the whole Tillim before you go to sleep. So I went from the dormitory where my brother put me up for that till after the holidays, and as soon as I opened the door to 770, I could see the Rebbe standing in the Beis Medrash, right at the door. His beard was black, and he was dressed in his Shabbos clothing, long jacket, if you will. And I was struck by his beauty, by his countenance, saying the Tillim. I was really drawn. There was something special about just his face. And the next night was already the first night of Shmini Atzeres. I was sitting in the shul at 770 Eastern Parkway. The shul at that time was half of this size, maybe less than half. And there was 6 or 7 youngsters older than me, teenagers. I was not a teenager yet. And they were just sitting around and talking, and I was talking, but sitting around and talking. Around 10:30 at night, we're sitting in the Beis Medrash, the door was open, and the Rebbe was coming out of his office, which is opposite the door to the Beis Medrash, in his coat. He's going home. For the Suda, for the Yontif meal, he was up on the second floor with his father-in-law and mother-in-law, with the family. And then, when he finished, he was told me he lived at that time in the 4th floor of an apartment house on the corner of President and New York Avenue. And in any case, what happened was, he saw us us kids. And he walked into the shul and he says, "Did you have a hakafa for tonight to go on the Bimah with the Sefer Torah and have a pasuk Torah?" Well, we had nothing. Nobody cared about us. He went back to his room and took off his coat. He came into the Beis Medrash to us 6, 7 kids that he never saw before. and made sure that they had a Pasigat Teresa and Hakafa. Well, while they were dancing, in the circle, you have a hand and one in front of you if you've seen the Rikud. And at one point, I wouldn't put my hand in the Rebbe. I was too respectful of him at that time. And but I wanted him to put his hand on my shoulder as the circle turned, and I managed to do that. Made me feel very good, and I remember till this day as we sit here, I'll never forget it, how he cared for us. He wasn't Rebbe yet, he was just the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe. But as I said, I grew up in a home where he was also regarded as a very special human being. So, that's how it all started. On the day after the holiday, I went into the yeshiva office and I registered myself with my father's permission, etc., of course. And I started classes. They found a suitable class for me. And I was a student for the next 11 years until we don't graduate, but I had smicha, my ordination, and you never graduate. You're always what you are in terms of Yiddishkeit. What happened then, while I was finishing my English studies, the high school studies in the yeshiva, there was a full high school there with a science lab, etc. When I finished the high school in one building, was about a mile away from the headquarters, I then moved over to the headquarters, and the advanced classes started, and it was a different life. I only had the Jewish studies in my mind, and it went from year to year. There came a time when I was about 16 and a half, and I was sitting in the base medrash in 770 with my partner, the other side of the table. The boys were in the yeshiva. And somebody comes running in from the secretary's office and says, Yudel, that's my name, Chaim Yehuda, the short is Yudel. Do you have a driver's license? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I said, what do you care? He says, the Rebbe wants to go to the Yoho, and there's nobody around who has a car and who can drive. So please, for the Rebbe's sake, there's a car rental 2 blocks over. Get a car and take him to the Yoho. Well, what greater shock could a 16-year-old boy have for that kind of a task? And I was thinking to myself, why did I have a license at 16? Because when I was in Boston, I was actually 18. When I was in Boston summer vacation with my parents and family, and my brothers had a new vehicle bought for their business, and they said, you're here, we're going to be here for 3 weeks, so learn how to drive, why waste your time? I never thought I'd ever have a car at that time. But my dad was the sheikh with a long white beard. He says, Yudel, listen to your brothers. So I learned how to drive within a week. I had the license in my pocket, and I forgot about it. When the secretary came running into me, I had no alternative. So I went, and I came back. I survived. I can't tell you how it felt. I don't have that command of the English language to describe it, truthfully. What happened was, though, even when they went to the Yoho, he went at least twice a month. The Yoho is the previous Rebbe's father-in-law is interred. And so invariably, I drove him back and forth. There was not too much talk between us. I sat on the front, and he sat on the back. And that went on for a while, for a few years. But something else happened during those years that I was free to just for my Talmudic Hasidic studies. And there were about, for some reason, there were about 15 or 16 senior students, I was the youngest of them, who were learning a whole day in the yeshiva, in the Beis Medrash. And there came a time where the Rebbe would call individuals of the boys in, even though when the Rebbe saw people it was at night. During the afternoon or late morning, he would call in singly the boys, asking them what they're studying in the Talmud and in the Chassidic studies, and suggest if they would accept it, he would suggest that in addition to the Zmanei Halimud, the schedule of the studies, if he suggests that they learn something in Talmud and Chassidic studies, nobody would ever say no. I didn't say no. He called me too. Actually, at that time, I was studying in another building, but and I was the youngest of this group of boys. And the course of those teenage years, the Rebbe took us under his wing like children. And I can't be too descriptive because I could do this. You'd be sitting here till tomorrow morning. But it was a pleasure to be a student of his. It was a special to attend his addresses. Every Shabbat Mevorchim, the Shabbat before the new month, the Jubilee month, the Jewish month, he would speak publicly in the shul with 25 people. And I was fascinated. I was always fascinated by him. I would sometimes be able to sit in the davening and Shabbos in the same benches, he in one end and I in the other end. I didn't think it was disrespectful. But in any case, that's what I did. And another thing happened, though. During those years, I would receive mail from home, from my father, a mother, and my brothers and sisters. They were all, three of my sisters married Lubavitcher young men, and were out in Shlichus, one of them in New Haven, Rabbi Hecht, I don't know if your uncle. It was my brother-in-law, married my older sister, Ruthie. And the other two, one was in Chicago, and one ended up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So they would send me mail, and I used to eat in another building. That's not important. But what happened was that the Rebbe, where the kitchen was a mile away, and the boys from 770 went there to eat dinner, and almost a few times a week he would tell one of the boys, when you see Rabbi Krinsky, tell him I have something for him. Well, when I went to ask the Rebbe, he wasn't the Rebbe yet, but no, he was. What he had mail that came from different parts of my family. You know what a postcard is? Everybody can read it. He didn't want that to happen. So instead of putting it out in the hall for the mail for the boys to pick up, he put it on his own desk and saved it till I came. I realized long after that he knew who I was. He knew my parents. He knew my whole family. And he never opened up to me in that regard. But I appreciated it even more that he did it to me because he adored my parents, the Rebbe, even before he was Rebbe. After the war, World War II, we have a printing house. One of the men who came with me is involved with the printing house. We printed books in Poking and other European countries. And after they were printed, they had to be shipped to America for use. So invariably, they sent it to Boston Harbor. And so the Rebbe would call my dad and tell him the information was about, and send the papers to take it from the wharf. And so there was a close relationship. And I know that he appreciated because of what they did for the previous Rebbe in the 20s and the 30s, way before I came along, for the people that his father-in-law was sending to America for whatever shlichus, whatever purpose he had to send them. So there came a time, as I grew up, I became closer to the Rebbe. I saw that I could talk to him. And when I was 22 approximately, some people had called my parents about my availability for the daughters. So I discussed it with the Rebbe, And he said I should wait. And about a year later, he invited me to come into his office. And he said that now, if you do as God will provide. And he was involved with my progress in the marriage. It was somebody he picked from a list of 5 that I didn't know who they were. I told the Rebbe, I know the parents, but I don't know any of the girls. He said, Meisha's Schwester was a chaver of mine in the Beis Medrash for years. I never knew he had a sister. But in any case, it worked out. And that's every summer from 1949 or so, the yeshiva would send out the talmidim, the boys, in pairs to different parts of the country and sometimes overseas to visit Jewish communities at random, the 3-week period between Yud Beis Tamuz and Chav Beis Shvat, Chav Beis Menachem. And I went most of those excursions, and they were very, very, very informative to see how people live in a place where you don't even know where you're going to stay. But we managed. All the boys managed. And in 1957, I came back with my partner, and I wrote a report to Rabbi Chaim Yehuda, who was the Rebbe's main secretary at the time, an elderly man, about my travels for those 3 weeks. We were in the West Indies, we were in Jamaica and Dominican Republic and some cities in Florida. I sent a report to Rabbi Chaim Yehuda because he was the main person in that particular organization, America's Lenyoni Chinuch. And about 2 days later, he calls me in to his office, and he says to me, I thought he was going to ask me something about the report, which he did. I skipped something very important. When the Rebbe okayed me to be interested in marrying, after he picked one out for me, and I was very glad. She was a wonderful lady. I met her, and we both admired each other. And within a few weeks, we decided that we will marry with the Rebbe's consent and blessing. And we decided, no, this was another year. It's a long time ago. Rabbi Chaim asked me, what are you planning to do after you're married? I said, it might sound funny to all of you, I have no plans. I was hoping I could stay on for a year or two, continue the studies. It was very dear to me. I really wanted to. And he said, do you have no plans for a job or occupation? I said, no. I didn't realize why he asked me that question. I found out later, on the day of my wedding, was Chof Elul, a Monday night. And my parents came in from Boston. We had no family in the area. They had to come by Greyhound bus on the day of the wedding, but that's such is life. And they davened with the Rebbe's minyan, Mincha. Mincha's of it. The afternoon prayer at 3:15 in the afternoon with the students in the Beis Medrash that I first saw him in. And the Rebbe noticed that my father was at the minyan and my mother was in the hallway, in the lobby near his office. And going back into his office after Mincha, he noticed both my parents were there. And he asked Rabbi Chaim to ask them to come into his office, the Rebbe's office, which was also not usual. They spent about 15 or 20 minutes with the Rebbe. And when they came out, they said he wanted to talk to them because he doesn't want Yudel to go looking for a job. Yudel was I can't say it's slang, but the Rebbe said it about, Yudel, a Jewish name. he doesn't want him to go looking for a job because I want to be the one responsible for his livelihood. It was a shock. And I realized now why Rabbi Chaim was spying for the Rebbe to ask me if I have a job at hand. And that night, the Rebbe officiated at our wedding in the backyard of 770. It was a very rainy afternoon, and it was Monday night. The chuppah was supposed to be, I think, at 6 o'clock. And the rains were very heavy to the extent that the streets in the back were overflowing. And at that time, the backyard was open. Now it's made part of the shul, but it was open. And if the sewers, for some reason, didn't work properly, sometimes backyards are that way. What are we going to do? The Rebbe's coming out to officiate. It's pouring. Women with their gowns and dresses, fancy dresses, and the men were ready for a wedding. So what happened was, it let up after a while, almost completely. And the Rebbe sent word to tell the wedding people that he doesn't want, we don't have to worry about him getting wet. It's subsiding. He's ready to come out at any time. Just let him know when you want him to come out, he'll come out. Well, it really subsided considerably, but it was drizzling. Light drizzle, which is a miracle in and of itself, because it was pouring rain for hours. And then it came out with his siddur to say the blessings for the wedding. And he stood under the chuppah, and the rain, the canopy was soaked. They didn't change the canopy. So the water was dripping from the middle of the chuppah onto part of his siddur, and from onto his brim of his hat, and onto the siddur, and he didn't budge. It was tough to watch, but then it was not concerned. He knew there was a crowd, came to a wedding, and rain could have got stronger. So anyways, he finished the chuppah, and we lived happily ever after. But in the view of the fact that the Rebbe said that he's going to take care of me, there were some things I had to discuss with the Rebbe and with my parents. And what happened was that we had to work out a schedule and salary and things of that nature. And Rabbi Chaim was very difficult to deal with. The Rebbe said, don't press him too much. In any case, that housekeeping finished. And since it was before, I said it was Chafel, that's 10 days before Rosh Hashanah. It didn't fit that I should start working before the holidays, and it's a month of it. It doesn't work. Wouldn't be good for anybody. So the day after Simchas Torah, the holidays were over, and I got a key to the office. And a few days later, I was alone in the office at night, 7:45, and the intercom rang. I knew where it was coming from. It was coming from the Rebbe. There was nobody else there to take the call, so I picked up the phone. And the Rebbe asked me to come into his office. I went in. He was sitting in the chair on the side of his desk, and I could see what he was doing. The Rebbe would dictate letters to different secretaries, and he was correcting an English letter, full page, that he was in the middle of copying, working on when I came into the office. So he asked me to wait a couple of minutes. I was just watching him work, and he was writing things between the lines and in the margins and crossing out things, arrows all over the place, going this and that. And ultimately finished. He stood up, and he gave it to me. I knew the Rebbe's handwriting in English and Hebrew perfectly. I didn't need any advice. But handing it to me, he told me something. He said, don't be surprised. He asked me if I could retype it, which I said, of course I could. He said, start from the beginning, read word by word and line by line. And you will see that at the end, it'll all work out. While he was saying that to me, I realized he wasn't only talking about the letter, but this is future in his office. Take it easy. Don't get lost. It'll all work out. Yeah. I think that's good advice for everybody. That's a hip.
So were you then given general administrative duties? I know that at some point you became particularly involved in public relations.
Yes. That's what I did till now.
Yes.
Although there are many people, it's changed. The face of public relations is not today what it was then. I can talk about that later if you wish, but in any case, you got some instructions there from the boss.
Right. Yes. Well, I know that you also had the opportunity to get to know the Rebbitzin, and
Yes.
most of us did not have that opportunity.
Most people did not know her.
Yes.
Many didn't hardly ever have seen her. I was lucky that I was very, very friendly with her. We had many discussions. We went places together that she couldn't go alone. She was a very special lady. I can understand why Rebbe married her and he married him. You know, a couple has to have something, some level that you can get along. They both had that capability. And I would say they were in love with each other. Rebbe speaks about love in the Sichos, in Hebrew and English. They're the only ones who could understand each other. I can tell you something about her that's very dramatic. A lot of things, but there's one thing that really I saw. If you hear, should I tell the story? You wanted to ask a question before? You wanted the story? Okay. In Shmini Atzeres of Topshin Lamed Ches, that's 1977, 78, Lamed Ches. Right. The Rebbe, in the middle of the Hakofis, Shmini Atzeres, we're standing up at the Aron Kodesh, and the shul, was, all the chairs, all the seats and the tables were taken out so people could at least stand. There must have been over 5,000 people there in the shul, full to the wall to wall. And in the middle of the fifth Hakofah, I was up closer to the Rebbe. He turned ashen, and he took hold of the chair near him. He never did that before for support, and he sat down. Something awful was happening. There were some doctors there for the holiday, but they were from different cities. There was nothing they could handle. And but the Rebbe wanted to finish the Hakofis. It was the 50, he had 2 more to go. So what happened was, he didn't speak to anybody. He was in great pain. He didn't look. He was not normal color. But he got up, and with that pain, he went for the other 2 Hakofis. So the 7th Hakofis, 6 and 7. Then he walked up the stairs. There's an elevator there, but he didn't want to use it, Yontif. So he went up the stairs to his office, 1 flight up. And he sat in a chair in his office, and some doctors who were there for the Yontif came in. I know that on that day, Hoshana Rabbah particularly, the Rebbe was very disturbed by something that was happening in the family. I knew, right, because I was in the Rebbe's room then. I took him home. But the Rebbe on Hoshana Rabbah, just like before Yom Kippur, would give out lekach, honey cake to people, pieces of honey cake. I assume that a lot of you heard that. People would come in, stand around the block. and got a piece of honey cake with a blessing for the year. And the Rebbe said that he would make Kiddush, but we sit in the Sukkah Shmini Atzeres, not only Sukkahs. Chabad sits in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. He would have to go into the Sukkah, which not too far was in the front lawn, smaller Sukkah. So as he was going out to the front lawn, the Rebbe came walking from a house in President Street, somebody, and came into the office, the Rebbe's office, and she said, "What's going on?" And the Rebbe was going to make Kiddush, and she came just before Kiddush. And they brought down a bed from the third floor so the Rebbe could lie down and take it easy and rest. In the meantime, we called 4 doctors from New York City, Brooklyn, and Long Island, all cardiologists. And they said, each one said, and they came separately, that the Rebbe has a serious heart attack, and the only thing he can do is go to the hospital. He can't be treated here. So serious. And each one said the same thing. And the Rebbe said he's not going to a hospital. He has to be treated. He's going to be treated right here in the office. Well, there was no reasoning. In the meantime, one of the doctors who worked in the Jewish hospital, which was not too far from Crown Heights, and he brought a cardiogram, and he hooked up the Rebbe's chest and the wires outside in the table in the 4-room, and it didn't look good. I could see it wasn't good. And what do you do? It's not getting better. It's not going to get better. And the Rebbe refuses to go to the hospital. And what do you do? And around 6:30 in the morning, it got even more serious than it was before. And the Rebbetzin, who was upstairs by her sister's apartment, or by her mother's house, 2nd or 3rd floor, comes walking down the steps to come right into the Rebbe's hallway, the room before the Rebbe's office. And she says, I was standing there with some other people, and she says, what's happening? So the doctors there said, we're going to sedate him and take him to the hospital. What are you going to do? He has to go to the hospital. Everybody said he has to go to the hospital. 4 doctors have to go. And she said, in English, she said, what does my husband say? He doesn't want to go. So what do you think a woman in her 70s who has nothing, Rebbe's who has no relatives around, no children. Same thing for the Rebbe, for the Rebbe himself. 2 lonely people. Imagine the Rebbe and the Rebbe, lonely people in the critical situation. Nothing, nobody can do anything. We're helpless, and it's critical. It's the Rebbe's life. And she said, in all the years that I know my husband, never once for an instant was he not in total control of himself. She said it like I'm saying it, casually. Now, I think anybody from the family would start yelling, do something. She stands there and she says these words in this tone. And I walked from that room to the other side of the hallway where my office was. And everybody remained standing there without any thought what that could be done. And I hear her walking after me to the office. And she turns to me. We were both standing facing each other. And she says to me in English, in Yiddish, Rabbi Krinsky, ich kenne doch sehr viele Menschen. Ich kenne nicht gefunden einen Doktor für meinen Mann. Rabbi Krinsky, so many people. Can't find a doctor for my husband. As soon as she said that, like a lightning bolt hit me. And I reminded myself, the doctors from New York, 4 other doctors, by the way, came after the first 4 went away. So 8 doctors saying the same thing. I'll only get more of the same. They can't take the responsibility because it's beyond their ability to save it. I remembered I was in the Rebbe's room a few months before. I saw on this table a book of cardiology from a Dr. Weiss from Chicago, who happens to have been a student, chassid, of my brother Rabbi Schusterman from Chicago, if you ever heard of him. The Rebbe sent him to Chicago. He had a shul with the Rebbe. And he was a student of his. And he went to Harvard. He was a Harvard grad. Sorry. And yeah, it could not have been better, though. You'll see. And what happened was, I called my brother-in-law Yontif for Ira Weiss's phone number. He didn't pick up. But God helped, I kept ringing it. Stopped and ring. He picked up the phone. He realized that it's an emergency. I told him exactly what happened, so he gave me Ira Weiss's phone number. I called Ira Weiss, and he tells me, one thing I want to tell you, if the Rebbe doesn't want to go to the hospital, no one should dare take him there, it'll make him worse. How the Rebbe knew that, I don't know. That's exactly what I was standing there, I heard it. And he says, I'll take the first plane out, but there's a doctor in Mount Sinai that he was, his friend in the same class, and the doctor, what was the name? He was the head of cardiology in the Harvard and the hospitals. I'll think of it as we talk. So in the meantime, so that other doctor came from Mount Sinai. He lived in New Jersey. He was there by 9:30, 10 o'clock. He immediately sized up the situation, and he ordered the pharmaceuticals that he needed, and he did what he had to do. And within an hour, the Rebbe was under control. And Ira came. We sent the police escort to American Airlines to LaGuardia to pick him up. He was there around 12:30 from Chicago. And he didn't leave the Rebbe's bedside for 2.5 weeks. And I called any other doctor, the muzzle, the luck that I called him. I called another doctor. He would have come and gone home. Come back tomorrow afternoon. He didn't leave the Rebbe's bed for 2.5 weeks. He lost his practice that he had with other doctors in Chicago. Well, later when he found out what he went for, he couldn't apologize enough. And the Rebbe, he spent a few weeks in a little over a month in his office, in the bed that was prepared for him. He davened there. We had Yonim there, Kiryas HaTorah, didn't miss anything. And while in the room, like a Saturday night, he said he wanted to speak to the world, the Rebbe. He's in bed with it, all hooked up. But nobody could see him. Sorry. Okay, I'll just finish it. And he got it. The doctor said he can speak for 20 minutes. He spoke for 25 minutes. He said in my Mercedes, he spoke to everybody. And the feelings of the world. I know when Rabbi Soloveitchik, who you all know probably, I can talk a lot about him because we're very close families. And we'll talk a lot about it. When he heard that the Rebbe was ill, he said he can't imagine a world without the Rebbe. Okay.
I'd like to ask you some questions as well about working so closely with the Rebbe. First of all, with the incredible energy that he had, what was the order of his day, and how was it possible to keep up with him? Did he have the same expectations of other people that he had of himself?
But he didn't sleep much. He lived in a President Street in a private home, and day and night, even at night, Bachrim, students would stand by the house to see which lights are going on and off in the house. They knew for the first floor, they didn't know if it was the Rebbe or the Rebbetzin, but somebody was up. He would go home every night, usually every night, with a shopping bag full of letters that he received in the course of that day or a few days to catch up on the correspondence. And we'd come back in the morning, and most of the stuff was answered or handled. Let me give me a piece of paper. I want to show you how the Rebbe would read a letter. Not only did he knew many languages, but he knew how to read a letter. I would stand in the office and watch him. He would pick up a mail, it's a whole page, and he would read it this way. I don't think it took more than a minute and a half. But he wrote an answer to it, having to go back to the front if they had to underline or put an arrow for something that they should do or not do, whatever. He had to go back. He had to remember the beginning of the letter. He did this for thousands of letters. I don't know.
I'm also curious to ask about his leadership style. Was he someone who laid out the vision and he left the details of implementation to other people? Did he ask for different views about what to do before making a decision, or did he present the decision to you?
Let me start from something very recent. We just recently celebrated the holiday of Hanukkah. I'm probably the oldest in the room. I remember Hanukkah when a few people in Bicknell Street put on the menorah. I think this past Hanukkah, more Hanukkah menorahs were lit on this planet, in more countries, in more capitals, in more government places, in more private places, and shopping markets, and highways and byways, that in the history of the Jewish people. Why? Because of the Rebbe. And I remember when it started. It was amazing. It was amazing when it started. And the shluchim, God bless them, if we have time to talk about the shluchim and the ladies, the shluchim, that is. It's going to save the Jewish people, big Mashiach. I believe that. There was one, I remember, there's some people here with me who remember, he told me way back that I should call all the shluchim that were around, at that time there weren't so many, and tell them to make, to light menorahs, aside from in the home with the family, in public places, wherever they can, and make parties, Hanukkah latkes, make something for children, etc. It started taking off. Then one year, he said that tell the shluchim that they should take photographs of these public menorahs. The next year, again, the first book was called Let There Be Light. The second book was And There Was Light. And it just grew. And then there were problems. Many places didn't want to put on. They were either embarrassed or they didn't think it's for public. Presuming this, it means it's for public. In any case, they didn't want to buy into this. So what happened was he called Nat Lewin, again from Harvard. You know him, I think. You know of him? Nathan Lewin? A good attorney, and he felt that this should be permissible under the First Amendment. And he started making cases, small towns, big cities, municipals, and federal cases, and state houses all over the country. And meanwhile, in other countries, our shluchim, the president of they were putting up menorahs in the centers of government. And he won every case. And he also prepared, God bless him, packets of information, legal information, so that if a mayor in a shtetl doesn't want to allow a menorah because of church and state separation, he's lost. And they have to agree. They have to agree. It's compulsory. So it went on for a couple of years, struggling, until it came to the Supreme Court in Washington. And that took about a year. It happened to be with a public menorah in Pittsburgh. The mayor didn't want it. Allegheny County. So it's Chabad versus Allegheny County. Shema, are you here? He'll know what I mean. Okay. So what happened was, it took about a year, and we won. When did we win? Very fascinating. Listen to this. Supreme Court usually gives out opinions in July. July 3rd, 1989, it came out that you have to allow it, and that's free speech. And July 4th, you know what July 4th is in America? The front pages of the New York Times with photographs, and every paper across the country, I'm sure, had a story about Hanukkah. I even had my picture over there, but that ruined. Can you imagine how anyways, so Hanukkah now, it became a staple. It's like bread and butter.
This raises an interesting question. Since Chabad made its home here in the United States, which I think was in 1940, or
1940.
Yes.
Became a citizen in 1949.
so clearly, as you say, Chabad has made a big impact on America. To what extent has Chabad itself become an Americanized organization?
It's very Americanized. I want you to know the previous Rebbe and the Rebbe loved the United States of America. They spoke about it in their public addresses. Look what it did. Look for the Rebbe and the Rebbe. Both Rebbes, both suffered losses, terrible losses. What did you want? What did you want? It became. When the previous Rebbe came to America in 1940, I was just 6, 7 years old. I think my parents came to New York. He boarded in New York. He said that. I want to think of the words. America's not different, yes. In any case, he did become a citizen later on, and the Rebbe felt that the American Jews are very special in a good way that can be dealt with in Yiddishkeit. It can be taught by the Rebbe even more so. What I want to say is, in his first year, he established a corporation, Chabad. That was the first American thing that he did. And 2 years later, he incorporated the American Chinuch, the next year, Machane Yisrael. And he tells the shluchim as they go out, publicly and privately, perhaps in cases, that wherever they go, wherever they open a Chabad house, they should get all the legal work, local, state, federal, and also be very, very, very careful with your accountancy, financial accounting. And when you have shluchim, it's interesting. You talk about Americanization. When we have the Kinnis HaShluchim every year, that's a world gathering of shluchim. This year, we missed past the year before, but this year we had close to 6,000 people in one room at a banquet. There are people there that don't speak the same language anymore, or never did. So the shluchim have to have translators to translate for them, between them. They don't understand some of the speeches because they don't speak English, or even Hebrew, to the extent. So it's very Americanized, very, very Americanized.
So, from an outsider's point of view, it's fascinating to meet Chabad almost everywhere that one goes, but one wonders, what is the corporate structure? How centralized is the organization? How much is it like a franchise operation?
Not a franchise.
How would you describe it?
It's a very clear what am I thinking of? Each one is independent. They have to conduct themselves according to the Shulchan Aruch. But different countries have different commercial things and schooling and whatever the laws are. They have to abide by the law. They're very, very honest financially and in terms of studying and teaching. It's centralized. It all comes from the Rebbe. But the Rebbe quotes often the Gemara in Yale Metzias, Adam Boreitz B'kav Shalei. Person wants to have its own possession. And the Rebbe wants them to have the ownership in terms of the running of the institution as they see fit according to that community. And it's working. I can just tell you this, that every week new shluchim go out in different places. People who never saw the Rebbe, and the devotion with which they go out is you can't even describe it. The same love as the Rebbe would have called them in, the husband and the wife, maybe a toddler or two were going on in it, no matter where they're going. But the same devotion. Nobody else in the world did it. Nobody else in the world can do it. And nobody in the world will ever do it. Chabad is growing vastly. There are thousands of shluchim now all over the world, in cities and islands and territories they've never heard of. You all listening to me? It's enormous. And it keeps on growing. And in fact, the Rebbe, I get, my mind ties too many things together. So the Rebbe spoke many times that even some shluchim who are in larger cities, especially in larger cities, should realize that there are neighborhoods that they can't reach. It's beyond their reach, and certainly not in an intensive way. Bring down shluchim under you. You be the boss of the state or the country, and that's how it is. There's a chief of state and a chief of a country, and work together in unison, and exchange information, discuss things, help each other. That's how it functions. It's a little amazing. That's how it is, and that's what's going to keep it growing. And I find it. I mean, I hope to live long enough to see it grow even more. But it's really astounding. There are thousands and thousands of people. There's hardly an area, geographical area in the world, if someone needs something that they can't find a Lubavitcher shliach for emergencies. Sometimes the first responders in Nepal. Nepal is not a Jewish country, but they have Jewish visitors, and there are Israeli people. What do they call them after the tint after they travel? What do they call them? Huh? Backpackers. Oh no, that's in America too. But there are avalanches sometime there, and I witnessed this. There's there is a shliach there with his wife Lifshitz, who live in the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu. Used to be good in geography. He needs to hire helicopters to help people. They're not Jewish, but he does it. I once called up the Jewish organization, the Joint Distribution Committee, to ask them if there were what exactly was it. There was an avalanche in Nepal, and people are dying. And the shliach there is not that rich, but it cost him $25,000 for a helicopter, and he didn't many helicopters. It was a big bill. So they said, then we'll send them some money. But they were first responders, not for Jewish people. There was a bus turned over in Chile a couple of years ago. Who was there? Chabad was there. Many cases, Chabad is there. The floods, the hurricanes. In our country, in Florida and in Texas, wherever it happens, who's going to go up 20 floors to a sick lady who needs a medicine? She can't get down. She can't go. The elevator's not working. She can't get her pills. What do you do? So the schools got kids together, and they served these people, went up and down the stairs, saved lives just by bringing them bread and something to eat, something to drink. That's Chabad. They don't. Not Jewish. We're not going to help them.
Are you concerned about saturating the market? Imagine that every campus already has a Chabad house, and there's a shul everywhere. What is the next generation going to do?
I got to tell you this story. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. And this was public information. I saw it online. A rabbi in Texas who claims to have the largest conservative temple in America. I forgot his name, and that's not important for this. And his daughter went off to Virginia to college. And the day she got to Virginia, she calls up her father. She says, Dad, I knew which room I'm going to be having in the dormitory of this, I don't remember the name of the university. And I bought a mezuzah special for that purpose, for that room, to put it up in the room when I come. I'm here and I don't have the mezuzah. Look around the house if you can find it. I need the mezuzah. She wanted it dearly. He couldn't find the mezuzah in the house. He says, he calls up Amazon. That's what he said. He called up Amazon. He says, we need 5 days. We'll get you a mezuzah. He called up the synagogue. Nobody answered. He mentioned 4 people that he called that there was no mezuzah. So he says this on the television. He says, well, I'm not so close to Chabad. I'll try Chabad. He calls up the Chabad house in the university, tells his daughter's saga, and he says to her, I'll be there in 30 minutes. And he brought her 2 chalot for Shabbos and candles for Shabbos licht. What do you say? Tell me another story that pertains to women that comes to mind. As I said, I was involved with a few stories. Do we have the time? About public relations. I got a call from the New York Times, Ari Goldman, Jewish writer, and he asked me, he was commissioned to do a story for Hadassah magazine. It's a women's magazine, of course. And he wants to know if Chabad has anything special, the relationship between parents and school children, the children at school. It's something that's very important to know now, if I'm correct. Parents mixing in the schools, you know what I mean? I'm sure you do. So I told him something that I had read in the Chassidish literature, that the previous Rebbe's father, Rashab, Shalom Besh said that the parents, that mothers and fathers should spend a half an hour every night in discussing the chinuch of their children. And I told this to him. There's a close connection, and the Rebbe is telling you that Yal Piteli you have to do, Shinantam Levanecha. Okay. So he printed that story with a little more relish. And about a month later, the Rebbe is speaking Shabbos at the Fabrengen, and he told this story, what the Rebbe Rashab said about parents spending a half an hour every night of the educational welfare of their children. I said, that's exactly what when I came home from the Fabrengen, I got my mail, the Hadassah magazine came in the mail, and that story is printed in the Hadassah issue. So Sunday, I couldn't wait to get to the Rebbe to tell him how that it's not And so the Rebbe got up, the chair, went over to the bookcase, takes out a Shulchan Aruch, Chesed Mishpat. Just before Chesed, the last halacha, before Chesed Mishpat. And he opens it up and he shows me what it says there. He picked up the word Hadassah, the Rebbe. So he wanted to do something with Hadassah. That's pretty typical of the Rebbe, to pick on something that something is unimportant. The Rebbe can show exactly how important it is. And it says over there that husbands should know that they should be very careful with the honor of their wives. I think I have it in my pocket. Mind if I take a look? Sorry. All right, I don't want to take any extra time. The Rebbe shows me the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch. The husbands should be very careful with honoring their wives, because the parnasa of the family is the zchus of the wife. Parnasa, your livelihood that you're getting is because of your wife and her marriage. It happens to be a Gemara in Bava Metzia. If you want to look it up, I'll give you that. So he wanted me to write a letter to the Hadassah editors of the magazine with this halacha, for whatever purpose it would serve. I never heard again from them. But no, I know the magazine still comes out. There's another story I want to tell you. Rabbi Hecht, am I doing something wrong? I want to tell you a story that I think drives home in a very dramatic way the work of shluchim and shluchos. When I say shluchim, I mean the wives too, and the children. Sometimes children of the shluchim have more effect on the community than the parents, because of the children. There's a Gemara in Megillah. It says, Omer Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi was a Talmudic sage. All my life, I was pained by this certain verse in the Torah, in Chumash, in Pashas Kisove, in the Teichacha from Pashas Dvorah, Pashas Kisove. It says over there that I will punish you like the blind man, and you will grope, like the blind man gropes in the darkness. I never understood that verse. What difference does it make to the blind man if it's darkness or day? Can't see in any case. Until something happened that set me right. I was walking alone in a very dark night, and I see somebody walking with a lantern. And I got closer to the person. I see that he's blind. He asks the person, Rabbi asks the blind person, what good is this lantern that you're carrying if you can't see anyways? The blind man answered, it's not for me, it's for you, that you should see me. You should take care of me. I shouldn't fall into a hole or into a painful thicket. Every Jew has a lantern. Somebody has to help them. It's a Gemara. And I think this is a perfect description of what shluchim are doing, to whatever extent it is.
In order for the Rebbe to have the impact that he has had on America and on the rest of the world, he had to have a great deal of information about what was going on in the world. What were the sources of his information? Was he reading the newspapers?
You're reminding me of something. Israeli government, the prime ministers and military people, the generals, they all came to the Rebbe at one time or another. Everyone, except Golda Meir, for whatever reason. And they saw that the Rebbe knew, the generals saw that the Rebbe knew the terrain in different parts of Israel for the military to know. It's important in warfare. How did he know? I don't know. What I did every single day for a long time, I was sending to the Rebbe every day clippings from different newspapers. And way back there were 10 different newspapers in New York. And magazines, or something, of anything I think the Rebbe might be interested in. Not only Jewish things, but secular things, medical things, legal things. The Rebbe was interested in everything. And I would see sometimes when we went home in the afternoon, I went with him to the afternoon for 3/4 of an hour. He was carrying it home to show his wife. I assume. How else would he show it to? So that I knew things, I don't know how he knew them. I got a lot of mail. Maybe I really don't know. But he was aware of everything that was going on. And one time, I sent in a clipping of a story, something about Judeo-Christian. Something, I don't remember what the issue was, something about Judeo-Christian. And in the afternoon, the Rebbe called me and he says, "What happened to Islam?" Can you imagine? Yeah. How do you know? I didn't know you know. You know who this is?
Yes. And I think on the basis of something that you told me before, there was also some involvement of with some of the people in the arts, in
Yes.
theater and sculpture.
I want to give you one more story about journalism. From the first day I went into the office, I mentioned before when the Rebbe told me first week about not getting perturbed, confused, everything will work out. I started getting in touch with the newspapers, the newspapers in New York, and the Anglo-Jewish papers. There were about 120 of them. I got a directory in the country. I wrote letters to each of them. I sent them newsletters. There was no email then. So you had to go to the post office 3 o'clock in the morning and make sure they would get it the next day. Newsletters, information what the Rebbe spoke Shabbos or something that was, whatever it was. There was hundreds of them. And I had trouble. The only trouble I had with the paper I had was New York Times. I couldn't reach them. There was one writer, a Jewish man by the name of Irving Spiegel, Pat Spiegel, it was called. And he had a lock on Jewish news going in to the newspaper. I remember him, holiday news and whatever it was, if it had a Jewish content, he was the one who decided if it goes into the paper or not. And I couldn't get through to him, and a Jewish man. So I called him one time. So one time, my wife knew my problem, and she says to me, I knew his wife by that time, Spiegel's wife. She was a fine woman, not like the husband at all. And she says, why want you to invite them over some night for dinner. A night that there'll be a fabringen, like in the weekdays. And you'll introduce them to the Rebbe when they have the little break between the talks. So that was a great idea. So they both came. It was Tu B'Shvat, so it was in the middle of the week. There was no problem with Shabbos and traveling. So in one of the breaks, I went over to the Rebbe with Pat. I said, Rebbe, this is Mr. Spiegel from the New York Times. The Rebbe looks at him. He pours him some wine in a cup to say L'chaim, and the Rebbe says L'chaim with him. You know what he tells them? Mr. Spiegel, you can reach more Jews than I can. And you know what happened? From that moment, he became a different person. They had one son, became Shema Shabbos, married a fine girl, had children. He works for the government and lives near Washington. It's a pretty good idea. And it took no time. The Rebbe's wisdom. And from that day on, whatever had news, he printed it. You can check it in the, I guess, in the library. You wanted to, yes, about an art?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a famous sculptor with the name of Jacques Lipschitz. He was born in Russia, but he lived most of his life in France with Picasso. He was that kind of fellow. Yes. And came to America. He got sick. He had to go to the hospital. And one of our lawyers who worked with us in New York had a relative who knew him. So he visited him in the hospital. And Jacques asks him, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. I work for the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he says, yeah, if I live to get out of the hospital, I have to go see that man. By the way, his mother's name was Krinsky, and came from not too far from my father came from. He used to, anyways. What happened was, he got better, and he arranged to come to them in an afternoon, which was unusual. They spent a long time. The next day, the Rebbe sent him a pair of film. He told me later that he never missed a day since. So anyways, he had completed a huge sculpture, bronze sculpture of a phoenix. It doesn't look like a bird, but he calls it the phoenix. It's about 20 feet. He had almost finished it, and he passed away in Italy. He took care of his funeral. He's buried in Israel. And his widow, Yudel, didn't know what to do. And she was a sculptress in her own. She could finish it, the small touches up. That's what she could finish it. But a worse thing happened, that the Israeli government reneged on their agreement. It's a Christian something or other, and you can't bring that. How can you bring something like that with a Christian nature to Israel, Holy Land? And she was very broken. So I suggested one day to her, go to the Rebbe, tell him you feel bad, tell him maybe he'll cheer you up. So I got her an appointment. It was an appointment that I was in charge of the people coming into the Rebbe that evening. And her turn came, and she went in, she sat down, and about 5 minutes into the conversation, the Rebbe pressed in to come, I should come in to him. He asks me to take down the book of Iyov, Job, from the bookcase in his room, and which I did. And he turned some pages. He says, read this. It says over there in Perek Chavtes, I wrote down it says, V'chachel arbe yomim. V'chachel arbe yomim. Rashi explains very clearly. Chel is a bird that lives for 1,000 years and then burns to a crisp and is resuscitated after from the ground. It's not a Christian doctrine in any way, or form or fashion. Well, of course, it went up on the hospital. What's the name of the hospital in Yerushalayim? The big one. Huh? Hadassah Hospital. I hadn't seen it all the years until the last time I was in Israel, a long time ago. I went to see it. It's on a beautiful, like a plateau. It's quite a big piece. That's all there is over there. Is that, and there's an inscription about the one who made it, the sculptor. So this is another case of a woman that was helped, her lifelong hope. Whoever took care of her, just by being so smart.
You've mentioned the visits of Israeli leaders, both political and military, to the Rebbe. And of course, the establishment of the State of Israel is one of the biggest developments in Jewish history. And there's a great deal of Chabad activity, many Chabad Hasidim in Israel, and yet the Rebbe did not visit. Was there ever discussion of the possibility of visiting?
I'm going to have to get help from one of my Bagleta. I always wondered why. I never asked him the question. As close as I was, it's not my business. He can take care of himself, especially something of that magnitude. And I was in my public relations. I was very friendly with what's his name, the fellow with Crothammer, Charles Crothammer. You all know Charles Crothammer. He was a great guy. He was a very, very nice guy. He was Jewish. And you couldn't tell he was a paraplegic because people didn't know that he was, but he was. Actually, in Boston, when he was going to Harvard, at the same time as Ira Weiss, the doctor that I mentioned before, what happened was he jumped in a pool that had no water. And he remained, Ira Weiss knew him, the Rebbe's doctor. So what happened was, he called me once, and he says to me, the Rebbe, Israel, why doesn't he go to Israel? Why didn't he ever visit Israel? It's so noticeable. So I figured here, it's part of my job. And I figured I can say it in his name. I can't say I'm not going to tell the Rebbe what he wanted. I can't do that. He can write himself. I don't know if the Rebbe will get to that and when we'll get to it. So I asked the Rebbe. So the Rebbe answered me in writing that according to halacha, if you go to Israel, you can't leave unless for two purposes: to study Torah and to marry. And he can't do that because he's married. So not that I understand it. To say that the Rebbe probably had other means as well, but that was there was a legitimate halach psak.
What do you see as the greatest opportunities and challenges that face Chabad today?
We've been taught in Chabad to overcome all these problems, and we generally do. I think if there was such a theory available, the Rebbe would have had it. I'm not so smart. All I know is on the contrary. Like the Rebbe said, ultimately it'll all work out. We have to do what we can. Plus, my parents did it for me, and God will do it for the Jewish people, despite all the tzaras that we've had over the past century. Can't get over that. But I think that the shluchim are demonstrating the joy with which they go out. They're not in it for money. All of them, most of them, don't have enough money, but they're living and they're happy. They have children. They go to school and they love each other. I hope. All I can see is, in a practical way, that it's happening before our eyes. The more shluchim that go out, the less intermarriage there will be, and the less sodas there will be in families, and it'll be a happier place. I want to finish with, take a minute. You'll appreciate this. The Rebbe had a stroke March 2nd, the year it was that. I was the only with him, but he was at the Oho. And what happened subsequent to that happened, unfortunately. But a week before, you know about the Rebbe giving out dollars Sunday? You all know that, probably maybe many of you have been there. Should have been. To get $1 from the Rebbe. And there was a journalist. We didn't allow journalists interviews in the lines. There were thousands of people waiting. And one journalist waited to the end. I was there. And the Rebbe was approaching his 90th birthday. And there were journalists all over Crown Heights trying to get more information on the Rebbe. In fact, there was one journalist from the New York Times called me that they wanted to send Michael, forget his last name. Yeah, I don't know. Michael Spector, one of the, I knew him from the Washington Post from before this, and he was transferred to the Times. And they're sending him to spend hours with me to find out what the Rebbe is all about. I spent a lot of time with him. And there came a time where he asked me, tell me, Rabbi Krinsky, where does the Rebbe live? Well, the Rebbe had a nice home in President Street where he lived with the Rebbitzin, but after the Rebbitzin passed away, he moved everything to his office. And he would go back, and even the year that he left, the year after she passed away, he was home, but he would come to 770 Shabbos and Yom Tov, he would come 770, in any case. But at this point, the Rebbe was living in his office. The room that some of us grew up like. And so Michael asks me, where does the Rebbe live? I'd like to see where he lives. I was stunned. What am I going to show him? One room. And it had a washroom. And I told the Rebbe, the Rebbe knew what was going on. I told him he wants to see what he says, okay, I'll be going out this day, a few days for a couple of minutes. Give you the key, I'll give you the key. No, he wasn't concerned, the Rebbe. So the time came, we opened the door. He says, is that all there is? One room, a bed, a desk, a lamp, and a table. And I told him that you have to learn the book of Nevi'im, where the Navi would come to this couple from time to time, and the wife decided, the husband to build a room, an attic for him. It should have a table, a chair, a bed, and a candle. That's what the Rebbe had. That's what he was living there. That's where he lived. That's where he davened in shul. That's where he slept for a long time. So this Rebbe who's running the world, sincerely, with all his being, with everything he had. That's how he lived, and he didn't care. He cared because he lost his wife. He missed her. So anyways, this journalist came, one of the last in line, and asked the Rebbe a very pointed question. Nobody asked all of them. Rebbe, what's the significance of 90? Becoming 90 years old, what's the significance of 90? Without any hesitation, the Rebbe says that in the Hebrew alphabet, every letter has the numeric value. The letter for the numeric value of 90 is tzaddik. Tzaddik means righteousness. We must constantly strive to be more righteous. What was enough for yesterday was not enough for today. Today we have to prepare for a better tomorrow. I want to conclude with that, because we're in that tomorrow. Isn't it poetic?